this lesson you're going to make some shortbread. We're going to make two different types alongside each other. So one's going to be plain and one's going to be have cocoa in and therefore be darker in colour. And then you can decide how you want the two mixtures to be mixed together in order to make a different effect. So we've got some windows, some lollipops and some owl's eyes on here. And there's a few other ideas on the screen of a marbled effect and striped ones and swirled ones as well. So what we're going to be doing is putting the oven onto a gas mark 4 or 180 if you're on electric. And then you're going to have two separate bowls. In one bowl you're going to have butter, flour, caster sugar, and in the other one butter, flour, cocoa and caster sugar. Leave the milk out for now and you're going to rub the butter into the flour. So in each of the bowls I've measured 125 grams of butter and 50 grams of sugar so far. What I'm going to do next is just with a knife I'm going to cut up the butter until it's in much smaller pieces, because that will make it easier to rub in. Once I've done that, I'll be ready to add my flour. So I'll cut my butter up into much smaller pieces. I'm going to take my sieve and then I'm going to sieve in the flour, sieve all of that through. In the other bowl I'm going to do the same thing, so we've got 175 grams of plain flour going into this one, and in the other bowl we're going to have 160 grams of flour and 15 grams of cocoa powder. Now the type of flour that we're using on this occasion is plain flour, and that's different to what we've used for the bread, completely different. So when we're making bread we want a type of flour which is really high in the protein called gluten. And what that does when we knead the bread, it goes really elastic and stretchy, and it allows the bread to stretch when it rises, when we leave it to prove and when it's cooking. When we're making shortbread, the word short means that it's got like a the opposite to elastic, basically, that it sort of crunches and snaps really easily. And you would have heard probably of shortbread, short crust pastry, and they all work on the same principle. So what we don't want that elasticity produced by the protein, the gluten in the flour. So we don't want to work this very much. What we're aiming to do, and I'm just breaking up the pieces with my fingers, what we're aiming to do is to rub all of these lumps of butter out with our fingers until we end up with breadcrumbs, but we don't want to overwork it because we don't want to make it elastic in any way. Now another option for this, which you might have if you want to make it another time at home, and I've got one at home, is a food processor. And what the food processor does is it does all of the hard work for you. So you can pop it in, put it on, and that's going to do the same job as if you did it by hand. So that's going to mix the butter in with the flour, and we be careful not to overwork it so that we don't end up with an elastic mixture. Okay, so I finished mixing these two together. So I've rubbed the fat into the flour. I did use my food processor to speed up the process, and I've got something now that looks like breadcrumbs. So this is my mixture with the cocoa in, this is the mixture without. Now what I didn't mention before, which is really important to say, is that you must use a block butter or margarine like this. I would normally use butter because it gives a much nicer flavour in a shortbread. You've probably heard of all butter shortbread. Anything that comes in a plastic tub like this, which is a margarine, it's just simply too soft, and when you start to rub it into the flour it's going to start to melt more, and this will all stick together rather than being breadcrumbs. It's really easy to overwork the mixture. So a butter or a margarine in a block with a wrapper like this, not a tub. What we need to do next then is add about a tablespoon or so of milk into each of these mixtures, and then just mix them until it comes together into a dough. Right, so I've added my tablespoon of milk into this mixture and already mixed it together, and if I squeeze it together like this, it's coming together in a dough without being sticky. I did a tablespoon of milk into this one as well. Now, I forgot to mention that the butter needs to be really quite cold, so keep it in the fridge until the very last minute. Let's see if that will squeeze together. Yeah, that's going to squeeze together as well. So I'm going to put the iPad down now and finish getting that into a block. Okay, so I learned quite quickly, as soon as you start handling it, the butter starts melting and it gets quite sticky. So I've sprinkled a little bit of extra flour, both on the table underneath and on the top. Not too much, we don't want to dry it out. I've just decided to layer mine up, and then I'm going to roll it, if I can. This is where you don't want it to have too much flour on it, you don't want it to crack actually. I'm going to see if I can roll it into something that resembles a Swiss roll a little bit, with the seam on the bottom. It's cracking a little bit, so I'll just put those cracks, fix them up. Now if I was making these and I had all the time in the world, I'd probably leave this mixture in the fridge overnight, just so that it had the chance to firm up. I'm just going to cut the ends off because they're a bit ugly, and I'm going to cut them at about a 1 centimetre interval, and then place them onto a greased baking tray. Cooler your hands are, the more luck you'll have with these. Now there's no self-raising flour or anything like that in there, so they shouldn't rise up. They should stay the same size as they go in the oven as when they come out. So we don't need to worry about spacing them out too much on the tray. So 1 baking tray should be enough. And we want them all to be about the same thickness so they cook at the same speed. Arrange them on here. I might have to squeeze them up a little bit. Fit them all on. There we go, that's all fine. Just make sure that they're all together. Again, you could use a little bit of milk to help the 2 layers stick together if you think there's going to come apart. And then I'm going to pop those into the oven and cook them 15 to 20 minutes. So I'll pop them in for 15 minutes and then we'll check on them. They've been in for 15 minutes on a gas mark 4 or 180 if you're using electric. We're going to have a little look in there and see how they are getting on. Those look a little undercooked to me. They're a little bit on the soft side. I can see that without even touching them. So I'm going to pop the timer back on for another 5 minutes and check them. So these have had another 5 minutes in the oven now. They are nice and pale in colour. Shortbread's usually kept quite a pale colour, and if I just gently press one of them, it's quite firm to the touch. It's not soggy at all. Be careful because they are quite hot still, but that's how you will know that they're cooked. They'll firm up a little bit as they cool down, so I'm going to leave them on the tray for a little while until they're cooled. Now they've cooled enough that I've moved them off the tray, and you can pop them in your container and ready to take them home.